passed since Germany's surrender. On May 8, 1945, Langmuir wrote VE Day in his GE notebook and underlined it. Then he started a list of meteorology papers he wanted to read. For the last 3 years, he had been doing war-related research, taking up whatever question the government needed answered. He had designed smoke generators, investigated airplane de-icing, and studied precipitation static, the tendency of airplanes flying in snowstorms to pick up electrical charge that disrupts radio communications. Somehow all the projects he had been handed had converged in the fascinating field of weather study. That was what he was going to work on next. The GE Research Lab encouraged its scientists' fixations the way parents encourage a child's passion for dinosaurs or ants. When Langmuir first started there in 1909, Dr. Willis Whitney, nicknamed Doc, told him to look around and find something fun to work on. That's what all new scientists were told. Doc Whitney was convinced that was the best way to ensure they produced quality work. He was known for making daily rounds in the lab and asking the scientists, "Are you having fun today?" After a few weeks of playing around with whatever piqued his interest, Langmuir told Doc Whitney that he was enjoying himself, but he didn't see how this was doing much for the company. Whitney told him not to worry about that. Usefulness was Doc's problem, not his. And sure enough, before long, Langmuir's playful experiments had led to a complete redesign of the light bulb, meaning longer life for customers and a whole new set of patents for GE. Soon after, his goofing around with light bulbs led to the invention of atomic hydrogen welding. Langmuir had been following his own fancy ever since, and his fancy led him to weather. Now the Russians, and who knew more about snow, were offering him a chance to meet their top scientists. The invitation had come just days earlier, addressed to Professor Irving Langmuir, Schenectady, New York. Irving and another 25 prominent American scientists had been invited on a month-long, all-expenses-paid visit to Russia to celebrate the 220th anniversary of the Soviet Academy of Sciences. Never mind that there had been no Soviet Union 220 years earlier. Irving packed his bag and phoned his brother. The Russians, he told Dean, were picking him up in 2 days. When Irving got to New York, Dean raised a few concerns. The whole thing seemed haphazard. The invite said very little about the program or schedule. Many of the scientists' names were even misspelled. And did Irving know anything about Russian festivities? He would be expected to drink toast after toast of vodka. To refuse would insult Mother Russia. But to comply, well, one might find oneself in a compromised position. And what were the Soviets up to, less than a month after VE Day, inviting some of America's most prominent scientists, many of whom had been doing war work, on a junket? Sure, the Russians were allies, but after the inaugural United Nations conference in San Francisco, where their petulance had nearly scuttled passage of a UN charter, American suspicions about Soviet motivations were on the rise. Irving had dismissed all of this. That was politics, and politics did not concern him. He thought the trip would be scientifically interesting, so he packed his bags. That's how Irving was. It was fortunate he had even remembered to pack. A few years back, he showed up for a week-long sailing trip in a blue serge suit and dress shoes, without so much as a windbreaker. Irving's obliviousness to real-world concerns was legendary. He could walk right by a colleague without so much as nodding. When a woman fell down on the stairs in front of him, he famously stepped over her and continued on. Once he stepped in a can of paint, pulled his foot out without pausing, and kept on walking, leaving a trail of safety yellow footprints in his wake. So Dean thought it reasonable to make sure that his brother knew what he was getting into. Irving had assured Dean that it was all cleared with the State Department, so Dean had shrugged and gone to work. And then the Army officers appeared. Irving listened with his customary air of unruffled intensity, but beneath his patrician reserve he was livid. Born in 1881, Irving Langmuir had grown up in